Zoom. We don't need it to be that loud. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you to those of you who are here in person. And those of you online, if you guys want to add anything in the chat at any point, feel free. I closed the Q&A form because I can't look at it while you are, whatchamacallit, while I'm speaking. So I close it a bit. If anybody thinks of a question as we're speaking and you want to add it, just private chat me or put it in the public chat if you don't care. And I will address it at the end. All the questions I got were pertaining to birth control in various ways. So I'm going to finish off mikvah, which we didn't finish last week. And then we'll get into a conversation about birth control. And hopefully I'm going to cover all those questions during that part of it. And then we'll go on from there. Sound good? Okay. So can someone at home, can you guys see the screen? Did I share the right screen with you? Just somebody either turn on your camera and give me a thumbs up or give me a thumbs up in the chat that you can see the slide that says mikvah. Awesome. Hi. Okay. So here we go. So last week we spoke about mikvah in general, and we spoke about when you should go to the mikvah. We spoke about that idea that it's always going to be whenever you got your good hefsek, it's going to be exactly a week later, like 7 days later. So if you did your hefsek on Tuesday, you're going to the mikvah next Tuesday night. If you did your hefsek on Friday, you're going to the mikvah next Friday night. That's basically your rule of thumb. And we spoke about how you don't need to count each day, but it's good to keep in mind what's going on in terms of that fact that it is your 7 clean days. So if you ever have a question, don't assume you're bad, because then you might have lost that awareness and you'd have to start again. So always just kind of keep going and assume like either this next badika is a new hefsek or this is just the next badika of my 7 clean days. And once you hear back, then you can act accordingly. Just a thing about asking questions and waiting for answers. Sometimes people like feel really bad bothering the rabbi. Like if it's day 1 and you had a question, it's not like super dachuf, like urgent for you to have an answer right now. But if it's like day 7 and you had a question, don't put it in the Dropbox at the back of the mikveh and like wait around for 2 days. Like that's actually happened. We've actually had people who told us after the fact, I was supposed to go to the mikveh 2 days ago, but I didn't hear back. Like call someone in the office or call me or call Rebecca Weinstock and advocate for yourself. Like there's a system. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes somebody forgets to check the box or you dropped it off 10 minutes after someone just checked the box, so they won't see it for another 24 hours. So it's great to use the Dropbox, but in situations of like time sensitive issues, like make sure you push for yourself and advocate for yourself and don't just wait around. Sometimes things get forgotten or, things get dropped. So it's just important to keep that in mind. Okay. So we're going to talk now about preparation for the mikveh. I did include a checklist on here, and like I sent out all the slides in the past, I will send them out again. I'm not going to go through like every single thing item by item, because like I think most people are relatively familiar, but I wanted to just go over the theory behind what's going on so that we can like feel confident and familiar with what's happening. Just today, I saw something that was shared around on some college teacher chats, and I'm on like a mikveh attendant chat, and I don't believe it was written by an actual young kala. I think that it was written like by a kala teacher based on what she'd heard from other young kalot, but it was really like jarring. It was all about a girl who suffers not really from OCD, but just anxiety in general, and getting out of the mikveh and like realizing that she thinks she found a hair on her shoulder, and she's not sure if that hair was there before or if she only got it on her like when she was toweling off, or did it get on her from the mikveh? Was it someone else's hair, which nobody really wants to think about, but in some ways, whatever. So I was at a restaurant that will not be named the other day with my daughter, and there was a hair in her salad, and I was like, oh, we should tell them, look, this is a new one. And she like, without thinking, she just like pulled it out and like blew it away in the wind. And I was like, now we can't show it to them. And she was like, why? What's the big deal? Like, I just took it out. I'll eat the salad. And I was like, okay, like, I guess that's fine. Like, I'm not going to make you into like a germy person like I am if you're not, but do. So hopefully, she got some extra immunity to things from someone else's hair being in her salad.
Extra DNA.
Yeah, extra DNA. Thank you. Anyways, so it just goes through how this girl, and she gets home and she's so anxious and she can't be with her husband because she keeps rethinking. And even though she's been told 100 times she doesn't need to rethink, she keeps rethinking. And like, it's just like, you read this and it's like heartbreaking. Like, you realize how difficult this mitzvah can be for a lot of people. And if you are not one of those people, you should be very thankful. And if you are one of those people, I'm here for you. And I am really happy to work with you to help you feel more comfortable and confident using the mikvah. I'm not going to lie and say every time I go to the mikvah, it's like a beautiful, enlightening spiritual experience. Anybody who knows me, I'm like one of the least spiritual people I know. But it still shouldn't be such a negative experience. And I would love for you to be able to tap into that spirituality if that's something that you connect to. So if this is something that causes you a lot of anxiety and overwhelm, like please do be in touch with me if there's any particular questions that you have or issues that you have. This is sort of the general theory, and then I'll just kind of show the slides for a minute for everyone to see the sort of checklist. If you don't have a checklist of your own, you can take these slides, or you can go on yoatzot.org and get their checklists, which are very normal and halachic, but like not nuts. And I'm just going to go over a couple things about preparation, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so basically, the theory is as follows. Your whole body needs to immerse in the mikvah, right? So similar to, like, let's say you're taking a new pot to the kalim mikvah. So when you immerse the pot in the mikvah, you're not supposed to like put in half the pot and then put in the other half of the pot, right? The whole thing's supposed to go in, and you're supposed to like let go for a split second and make sure that the whole kli, the whole vessel is immersed in the water and touching the water all at once. So too our body, when we immerse in the mikvah, our entire body needs to be exposed to the water all in one moment. So it wouldn't be good enough for me to dip one leg in and then the other leg in. It has to be all of me all at once. My hair, my body from head to toe, all needs to touch the water. So the problem is, if you're, let's say, going in the mikvah with clothing on, then you run into a situation where you've got a barrier, a chatzitza, from the same shorish as mechitza, right? Something that divides or separates your body from the water. So what we basically have is the deraita level of what is a chatzitza, and then we'll have the derabanan level. And then what we do generally, which is actually super machmir, but like definitely the minhag and to some extent the halacha, but it's good to know what's really the deraita, the Torah level, what's really the derabanan, and then what's else, because that way you can like feel a little bit more confident. Obviously, if you ever have a situation where you're not sure, you can always ask a question. You can ask the mikvah attendant, you can call me, but it's always good to feel like you know what's flying. So the deraita level, the like absolute like real chatzitza from the Torah, like no ifs, ands, or buts, no way around it, is something that is both what's called rubo or majority and makpid, something that bothers her. So the example I tend to give, which is like the most unrealistic example in the history of the world, is let's say you were at a paint factory and you fell into a vat of paint on the day before you were going to the mikvah, okay? So your whole body is covered in paint. That is something that covers the majority of your body, and also something that no normal individual would want on their skin. We're not talking about moisturizer, which most people put on because they want it there. We're not talking about nail polish, which most people put on because they want it there, right? We're talking about something that you don't want on your body that also covers the majority of your body or the majority of your hair. Your hair is kind of like its own entity halachically. So if it's the majority of your hair, so for example, if your hair is very tangled, it's not just one tangle, but multiple tangles in your hair, more than 50% of your hair is wrapped up and tangled, that would be a real problem, because that means that it's both majority and something most normal people don't want. Nobody likes when their hair is knotted. Some people just live that way because, you know, like my daughter literally walks around with a bird's nest in the back of her head because she hates brushing her hair. She wakes up every morning. I'm like, literally, there must be an entire family of birds living in there. And she has straight hair. I don't know how she does it. And then we fight about brushing her hair. We've tried every hairbrush in the book, you know, like whatever. But nobody wants that. She doesn't even want it. She's just learned to live with it because she doesn't like the alternative, which is brushing it. But nobody would lechatchila in the outset go and be like, I want tangled hair today, right? So it's the majority of your hair and it's something you don't want, or the majority of your body and something you don't want. Okay, that's the Torah level. It has to fulfill both of those requirements to be Torah level. Derabanan, on a rabbinic level, it has to be either rov, rubo, or makpid. So either it's covering the majority of your body, it's covering the majority of your hair, or it's not covering the majority of you, but it's something you're makpid on. So maybe you didn't fall in a vat of paint, but you were painting your living room and you got paint on your arm and you can't get it off. So if you're an artist or a professional painter, having paint on your skin generally is like, whatever, like I always have a little paint on my skin. I'm a painter. But most normal people don't want paint on their skin. And if you get paint on your skin, you're busy Googling what's the safest, easiest way to get it off, right? Like you don't want it there. So that would be an example of a derabanan chatzitza. Now, derabanan is still halacha. I'm not saying it's not halacha, but in terms of like the severity of it, it is not as intense as something that is both rove and makpid. So when you're feeling very anxious about something, just keep in mind that if it isn't rove and makpid, that at least on a Torah level, your tevila, your immersion in the mikvah is kosher, okay? Now, derabanan, you want to have nothing that's either rove or makpid. So we're going to be a little bit more cautious to make sure we don't have either of those things. We generally go according to like normal people. So like if I'm an artist and I don't care that there's paint on me, that doesn't really mean that it's not makpid, because like normal people in the world would think that it would matter. And if my daughter was getting married, I would want to get that paint off before the wedding, even if I always have paint on my arm. Like that, it's still makpid, even for someone who generally does it. So that would be an example of something that's makpid that you care about, even if it's not rove, okay? Something that's rove that you generally don't care about, moisturizer. Let's say you moisturize your entire body that afternoon before going to the mikvah. I've had this experience a few times. I really like to get pedicures before I go to the mikvah. And when I was in my earlier days of marriage, I would go the day of the mikvah. And I learned quickly that that was a really bad idea because they put such intense moisturizer like all up your leg. And like, even if you soak in the bath for like an hour, which you don't have to do, but even if you did, you're not getting that moisturizer off unless you take like a terrible, awful exfoliating scrubber and like kill your skin. So like, that's not helpful. So I started getting my pedicure done the day before. I would not get polish on. I hate cutting my toenails. It's something that since I was a child, I've just like always hated doing. And this was like my little treat before the mikvah. I would go get a pedicure. I'd go a day or two before. So they would clean my nails well enough that I would just have to do a quick cleaning again the day of the mikvah, but they were relatively clean. They would get all that dead skin away that like I would never deal with on my own. That also, again, if it's attached to your skin, like you don't have to actually get rid of every little bit of dead skin. It's the stuff that's like hanging off and that like really somebody wouldn't want there. If it's part of your foot, it's part of your foot. That's your body. It's okay. But I would go and get my pedicure, get my foot massage, get all the cream I wanted in the world. And then by 2 days later, it's gone. It's already soaked into your skin. But if you give yourself a luxurious moisturizing 4 hours before you go to the mikvah, that's still oily, like sort of feeling could be on your skin, depending on what kind of moisturizer you use. So that's where, that's an example of something that is rove, covering most of your body, but not makpid, not something that is a problem for you. Just like looking who's here, so I know who I'm talking to. Okay. So that is an example for the derabanan, okay? The Ramah then comes and says, when the Shulchan Aruch is discussing all of this, and he says, okay, yes, those things are all true, but the minhag is that we remove everything, right? Like just because I like my rings and they're not, they don't bother me and they're not covering the majority of my body, I still take them off to go in the mikvah, right? And that's how we all operate. Nobody really thinks much about that. But let's say there's a situation where I can't get my ring off. I have like way fatter knuckles than my, you really? Yeah. I have way fatter knuckles than the bottom of my finger. It's a really big problem because like my rings are super loose on me here. They're always spinning around, but here it's quite wide. So there have been times, mostly postpartum, where I can't get the ring over my finger. I end up using a little soap or oil and I get it off. But let's say there was a scenario where I really couldn't get it off. There would probably be room for me to still go to the mikvah because at that point, I'm wearing something that is both not rove, not majority, and not makpid. It doesn't bother me. So technically, according to the Torah level and the rabbinic level, it's not a chatzitza, it's not an issue. So it's just important to understand this theory so that you can be a little bit calmer, right? A hair on your back is makpid. If you knew it was there, you'd want to get it off, right? But if you, I didn't put this quote on my slide, but there's a famous quote, I think it's from the Ramban, who talks about, and he has a whole like piece about the Hilchot Nida in general, and he says something, Lo nitna haTorah lemalachei hasharet. The Torah wasn't given to the angels. Like, be calm, be normal, like do the best you can to clean yourself for the mikvah. And then once you know you've done everything you need to do, you've checked your checklist, you've done what you need to do, like you don't need to make yourself crazy, which is why many people have the minhag to put makeup back on in the mikvah after dipping, just so like they can't later see some eyeliner and wonder, was that from before, was that from now? So people have like a minhag to do things like that, or to eat something quickly so they can't find something in their teeth or things like that. That's to help us stay calm and not second guess ourselves and not rethink things. But even if you realize when you get home, like, oh my gosh, I was wearing my watch. Okay, so yes, ideally, should you have taken it off? Of course. But is it rove? Is it covering the majority of your body? No. And is it covering the, so is it something you don't want generally, not for the mikvah, but generally, is that something you wouldn't want? No, it's fine, right? So that would be an example of something that technically your tefillah is kosher. And listen, if you're still in the mikveh parking lot and you can go back in, it's no big deal, then maybe that would be, worth asking the attendant, can I dip again? If you're home already and you've already like seen your husband and whatever, like don't stress. You can always call and ask a question. You can call the mikveh, you can call whatever rabbi, you can call a yoetzet. And you just should know that like there is room for leniency here. Obviously, we ideally try to remove everything, but you don't need to feel like every little tiny thing is the world's biggest deal if you understand the theory that's going on. That's why I feel that's important to teach. I can't see my slides. There we go. Okay. So think about it from the top down. Okay. So I usually do it like this. Like I just kind of go as I'm in the shower. I like think from the head to my toes. Like, did I do my ears? Did I do my eyes? Did I do my mouth? Right. That's just something to consider. Okay. Preparation. So another thing to think about, I think I had this slide and then I got rid of it because it was like too many details, but like, think about it in terms of things that are visible and easy to access. And then there's something called Venustarim, which means like inside your mouth, for example. That does not need to touch the mikveh water. You are not required to open your mouth while you are immersing in the mikveh, but your mouth should be clean enough that if it was to touch mikveh water, there wouldn't be anything in between. So that's sort of, but then, I always start with like the externals, like my skin and in between my toes and like my belly button and things that like for sure are touching the water. And then I move on to think about sort of more internal stuff. Okay. So this is the checklist from Nishmat. The first thing they talk about is making sure it was the right night. So just making sure you aren't going to the mikveh the wrong day. You want to make sure you did 7 clean days and you did a hefsek before the 7 clean days began, like we spoke about last time. The 5-day minimum or the 4-day minimum if you're Sephardic or you have special permission to be keeping 4 days. The second is have you removed all chatzitzot. So it says your clothing, jewelry, bandages, contact lenses. And sometimes I think we all have the tendency, like those of you who saw my email today, I had a typo in the subject and I only noticed later when my husband was like, there's a typo in here. I wrote tonight wrong. I wrote like TONGIHT or something like Tongit. But I looked it over 2 times and I sent a test email to myself and I still missed it. Like you always need someone else to proofread your work. This is the same thing. If you look at the same checklist every single month or every time you go to the mikveh, whenever, however frequent that is, you're going to be like, oh yeah, clothing, jewelry, bandages, and contact lenses. Yeah. And then somehow you're still going to go in with your contacts in. You know what I mean? Like I literally almost every time I go in the mikveh, I realize my watch is on. I sleep with my watch, I shower with my watch. It's always on my body. Like I constantly, the mikveh attendant will be like, did you know you're wearing a watch? And like a rubber band. Like certain things like, so when you go through the checklist, you need to kind of force yourself to like slow down and actually don't just read the words. Like, when kids are like reading for school and they're just reading, but then you can tell they're like not absorbing any words that they're reading. You don't want to do that. You really want to force yourself to just like clothing. Okay. Yes. I'm not wearing any clothes. Jewelry. Okay. I took off all my jewelry. What do I usually wear? I have a necklace. I have rings. I have earrings. So just to help yourself, not just like cut corners, things that are really obvious, like a watch, hopefully the attendant's going to catch and they're going to remind you, but some things like contact lenses, they may not. And, some of the attendants are great. They'll be like, did you make sure to remove it? But they list it so fast. You're like, yeah. And you don't even notice what you're saying yes to. So just make sure that you kind of slow down. Okay. So did you do a thorough chafifa? Chafifa is the Hebrew term for preparing our body for the mikveh. I really think of it as a glorified bath. You shouldn't really have to do anything so out of the ordinary from what you would do when you had enough time to properly clean your body. Do we all do this every time we shower? Not necessarily. Would we wish that we could? Probably, right? So like it's a glorified bath. So just think of it that way. This checklist is here. Here it talks about folds and creases, hidden places, right between your toes, your teeth, all of that. I will send out these slides. If anyone wants a screenshot, you can screenshot. I guess that means I'll be like in there. So hi. But I'll send out the slides if you'd like this checklist. There are lots of other ones. Just a word of caution about some checklists. Some checklists will say things like, a woman should bathe for a minimum as well as a maximum of 30 minutes. And you're like, oh my God, if I bathe for 31 minutes, have I done something wrong? If I bathe for 29 minutes, have I done something wrong? Like, what does that mean? A minimum and a maximum of 30 minutes. Like, what does that even mean? There's no real basis for that. Taking a bath in general is a strong minhag for Ashkenazim, but it is not halacha. You need to get your body clean. If you can get your body clean in a nice, long, warm shower, you can get your body clean in a nice, long, warm shower. If you can take a bath, I strongly encourage it because like, who has time to take a bath most of the time? And I'm not like a bath person, but like when I go to the mikveh and I force myself to take a bath, I like force myself to spend at least 10 minutes, like doing nothing. I'll put on like more like soft music and just like chill in the bath. Cause like, how often do I really do that? It's beautiful. But my sister-in-law, who I love dearly, is crazy. I make fun of her all the time. We all do. She takes a bath every single day for at least half an hour. And if she hasn't had her bath, she is like distressed. It is like a huge part of her mental health, which is so amazing that she knows that about herself and she can do it. My in-laws were renovating like the guest room area of their cottage, which is like a house near Toronto, like not their main house, but where we all hang out in the summer. And originally just put a shower in, and she was engaged to my brother-in-law at the time. And she like said something like, yeah, you know, like, I don't think I'll ever stay in that room, like if there's in the bathtub. And my mother-in-law like freaked out. She's really an amazing mother-in-law, I have to say, in this way. She like had them stop the construction and rearrange the whole bathroom so they could fit a tub in just for her, so she can take her bath every day. And now we're like, Sarah, you better take a bath every day you're at the cottage in that bathtub. Like you would have to use the bathtub. So that's not me. And I wouldn't even enjoy that if that was part of my schedule. I would find it annoying. But I try to force myself to like slow down and stop and reflect and just like either chill and let my brain like turn off, or try to reflect on like, what am I trying to work on? What am I trying to think about? What in my marriage or in my family am I trying to like focus on for this coming month or time period or whatever it is. So it's a good opportunity to slow down. But if you don't have access to a bathtub or you have some sort of other issue, a shower is totally fine halakhically and not something you should stress about. Okay, so that is bathing. And then the final step, which I think some people kind of don't realize, this is actually chafifa deoraita. Like from a Torah level, the chafifa isn't all the preparing that we do. It's the inspection you do in the mirror right before you go into the mikveh. So that's something you need to do at the mikveh. You shouldn't be doing it at home, because from the mikveh to getting there, you can end up with who knows what dust or dirt or whatever on you. I always get to the mikveh and have glitter all over the bottom of my feet, no matter how careful I am to scrub my feet. Like clearly I have girls. I scrub my feet. I put socks on right away. I get to the mikveh, glitter. Like, I don't understand it. It's the weirdest thing. My daughter was doing an art project the other day with glitter, and I was like, no, please don't use glitter. She's like, I promise I'll clean it up. It's literally all over my house. I don't understand. It's like this crazy magical substance that just, it's everywhere. Always. Even when they haven't used it in 2 months, it's still on my feet. You want to check yourself at the mikveh, okay? So you should rinse off again at the mikveh if you prepared at home. That really is the halacha. If for whatever reason, either because of COVID or for whatever reason you're not able to do that, you should do an extra dip in the mikveh before you begin your usual dip, just to like rinse yourself off and remove any like looser dirt that could be on your body. The inspection, you should look at all the visible areas that you can with the mirror. This is perhaps with the aid of a mirror. This nishman's clearly in Israel. The mikveh I went to when we lived in Yerushalayim did not have a mirror in the preparation room. I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. Like, where are you supposed to look? And I remember I once asked the attendant, and she's like, "Oh, I think we should get those."
Oh my God.
It's like so really. So like I had like a hand mirror that I bring with me, but like you need a mirror. And then anything you can't see, you can check by touch. So for example, this is like a very common issue, like in the crack of your tush, you'll often find hair, because when you shower, the hair like runs down your back and gets trapped there. So you just want to check quickly with your finger, make sure there's nothing there. And just like, you're just looking for anything obvious. We're not talking about like when some of these checklists talk about like, if you have a scab, you should soak it. Like, yeah, you can try soaking it, but you don't need to try ripping your scabs off. And if you're bleeding, that's also a chatzitza, so that's not helping anybody. So just don't be crazy. Really, really try. If anybody here struggles with OCD, there are particular OCD mikveh preparation checklists that also give you time limits so that you can't overdo it. Like it says exactly how long to spend on each area of your body. And it's something that you should also be working on, like through therapy and all those things, because it's a mental, issue that isn't something that a book and a checklist can help you with. And I'm definitely not equipped on my own, but if you want, help finding those checklists or anything, that's fine. But like, if you don't struggle with OCD, you just find that you're like overdoing it or you're feeling really anxious, just like, no, like anything that feels like this is not normal. Why am I doing it? Chances are it's not normal. You're not supposed to be doing it. But if you have any specific questions, you can always ask. One other thing about body hair that's just important to know. Body hair, generally they say if you're planning on removing it anyway, you should remove it for the mikveh, but it is considered part of your body. So even if you are planning on removing it anyways, if you forgot to remove it and you get to the mikveh and you realize you never shaved your armpits, you don't need to like go home to shave your armpits or like find the razor to shave your armpits. If it's easy to do and you're there and you're in the shower anyway, like go for it. You can shave. It's obviously a nice thing to do, but it's not necessary, because as long as the hair is attached to your body, it is part of your body. It is not something that needs to be removed. So it's not something you need to go crazy over. Obviously, if you're planning on getting waxed or shaving or whatever it is 2 days after the mikvah, it makes sense to try to schedule that beforehand because it's something that you are makpid about, something you don't want there. But if you forgot or you weren't able to, or it was the second day of Yontif and you're going to the mikvah that night, like, don't worry about it. You're okay. It's part of you. It's who you are. Hashem created us with it. It's not that bad. You can go in the mikvah. Okay. This is about immersion. The bracha should be on the wall of any mikveh you go to, or like on a card that you can take down, which is good for people like me who are completely blind without their glasses and can't see it on the wall. The prevalent custom for Sfardim is they say the bracha while they're still in their robe before going down the steps into the water. And once they finish saying the bracha, they take the robe off and go down into the water. Ashkenazim usually go into the water and say their bracha in the water, using the water as a cover for their body. Many people have a custom to, let me just like angle this down. They'll put their arms either like this to create a division between their heart and their genitals, which is like a halachic thing. That's a machloket whether women really need to do that, but people like to do it just to be cautious, or some people go like this so that they're covering their breasts and also making a division between their heart and their genitals. If you don't do that or forgot to do that, you're still good. Doesn't take away from your bracha or from your tefillah. And then usually most Ashkenazi women do one dip. If you didn't shower, you should do one dip, then do one dip. And then they do say the bracha, and then they'll usually do two more. And many women say the Yehi Ratzon after the second dip. So it's like dunk, bracha, dunk, Yehi Ratzon, which is the same Yehi Ratzon we say at the end of Shemona Esrei. And then dunk again one more time. That's like the most standard minhag. But if you learned something else from your mother or grandmother or college teacher, like it's all good. The Yehi Ratzon about the Beis Mikdash, just something to think about. Like, this is our first, our only remaining mitzvah related to Tuma and Taharat, to purity and impurity, that existed during the Beis Mikdash. That was like much more extensive. It's a whole area of halacha that I know nothing about, and most of us know nothing about. And when we're in the mikvah, it's like a real connection to like the original Judaism, and that idea of like what Judaism was like in the time of the Beis Mikdash, and what it was like to be connected to Hashem through this process of tuma, of impurity and distance from Hashem, and tahara, like coming closer to Hashem through this experience. So that Yehi Ratzon isn't just like random. It's placed there because we're davening to like get back to that time where Hashem is in this world in a much more tangible and experiential way, and that we have all these other elements of halacha that no longer exist in our time, and we don't understand what they are and don't know how to relate to them. But ultimately, this is what we're davening to come back to. We daven for the Beis Mikdash to be rebuilt 3 times a day. We don't always think about what that means, but being in the mikvah is like one of the most like connected ways we can feel to that like form of Judaism that we don't understand, that like post Beis Mikdash generations like can't really relate to what it is that's lacking. And this is an opportunity to sort of connect to that. So just in terms of like being able to sort of stop and think about that for a moment when you're in the mikvah is something, if you have nothing else to think about or daven for, you can really think about that. This is about immersion. The woman's entire body and all of her hair must be in simultaneous contact with the mikvah water. Therefore, the ideal position for immersion is as if she's weaving or nursing her child, which basically means like bent over, slightly crouched, your arms out. Your hand should be open with your fingers slightly separated, your eyes and mouth gently closed, not clenched, right? What's the idea? You don't want anything super tight that the water can't get through. If you got under the water and everything went under, you probably had every inch of your body touch the water. I don't think this is something to super stress about, especially if you're somebody who doesn't love to swim or doesn't love to dunk underwater and you get a little stressed or anxious when you go down and you like automatically go like this. You're probably fine. Try your best to not clench your eyes too much, but I really believe that like, if you stay down there for that whole second of like dunking and you're under there and you like move around a little bit, you're going to get it all. So I wouldn't stress too much about getting the exact right position. I think it's a Chabad minhag. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody on here knows, they have to lift their feet off the ground. We generally don't say that you need to do that. But I find that naturally when I go down, my feet kind of naturally come up. So whatever. No big deal.
Even like really notice.
Right, but like it kind of like to get down, you end up like kind of crouching or bending, and then like your whole body like goes like that. So whatever. But some people, the Chabad minhag, if it is Chabad, if I'm misspeaking, I apologize. Their idea is like if your feet are planted on the floor of the mikveh, then the water can't get under your feet. But like I don't think anybody is that firmly planted on the floor of the mikveh when they go to dunk, because like you naturally float. So as you go down, you sort of float back up. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. Okay, that's mikveh. If anybody has any particular mikveh related questions, you can put them in the chat. And we're going to move on to birth control. I don't even know what time it is. Okay, perfect. Yay. Okay, birth control. All right. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about whether or not a couple should or should not use birth control and when they should or should not use birth control. This is very dependent on each couple. It is very dependent on who their rabbinic authority is, how they view rabbinic authority in their lives, exactly how much detail they're going to go into with the rabbinic authority. I'm not going there. Okay. If you have particular questions about this, I'm happy to discuss them with you. You know, the general principle is if there is some sort of need for them to not be having children right now, if they have not already fulfilled the mitzvah of having, generally it's understood to be one boy and one girl, are more likely two boys and two girls. Some people can try for that many, many, many times and just end up with a lot of one gender and at some point just not be able to have any more children, right? So it doesn't always work out that way, but that's the ideal. But if a person is unable to have children for a medical reason or some other sort of extenuating circumstance, halacha views them as having permission to use birth control. The question that comes up for different rabbis is, what do we consider a need? Is a need, you know, a family that is just feeling overwhelmed right now and just can't handle another kid? Is a need financial need, that it's just the family can't handle financially having another child right now? Is it a mental health issue? Does the woman actually need a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, or is just feeling overwhelmed good enough? If they're newly married, some rabbis say, yeah, it's okay. You do need to get to know each other and it's overwhelming for you, the idea of being pregnant right now. We're going to give you a little bit of time. Other rabbis say, no, you shouldn't have gotten married if you weren't ready for children. So these are all different perspectives. I'm not saying which are right and which are wrong. I think that if this is an issue, you know, that you're struggling with, you need to make sure that you're speaking to somebody that you feel you can be open with and that you can truly share where you're at. Because if you don't, then you can't expect to get the answer that is right for you. And if you don't feel like the rabbi you are working with is sensitive and understanding of your situation, I encourage you as a couple to find someone who is sensitive and understanding of your situation. I'm not saying you should be shopping around rabbis all the time. That isn't recommended. But if the rabbi that you use as a couple isn't the right rabbi for you as a couple, then you need to address that. And both of you need to feel comfortable with who you're working with. So in the extreme example, if the woman really wants somebody more sensitive, and I'm not suggesting anybody here is doing this, but the woman wants somebody more sensitive and the husband loves his rabbi from yeshiva, the woman can't just go and like find some reform rabbi to like be her rabbi now. Like they need to get together as a couple, find somebody that works for both of them. If anybody is struggling with this issue or wants some suggestions of names or people to speak to, I'm happy to tell you. I can tell you like from the hawk from when I was in Stern, like which rabbis give you a heter for birth control when you first get married, which rabbis don't give you a heter for birth control when you first get married. Like everybody kind of knew, like, oh, you marry a guy in this year, he's going to ask a shayla this guy, that means you're not going to get a heter. You marry a guy in this year, you are going to get a heter. Not always so straightforward. Sometimes people got surprised and they got, you know, stuff they weren't expecting because the rabbis are not so black and white. They actually try to speak to the couple they're dealing with and address their specific situation. But if you don't feel like the rabbi you've spoken to is addressing your specific situation, you need to speak to a different rabbi. I think that's a really important thing to be realizing as a couple. And in general, you both need to feel comfortable with whoever you're going to for any kind of halachic advice, spiritual advice, marriage advice, children advice. Like you need to have somebody that you both feel you can work with. Okay. Assuming you have, call it permission or a halachic understanding that you need to or can be on birth control at present time, let's talk about the methods of birth control. Okay. So there are a couple of halachic concerns that are going to exist. So the first one is hotza'at zer levatala, this idea of spilling seed. It's based on the story of Yehuda's two sons and how they were, the Torah talks about how they would like intentionally pull out because they didn't want to impregnate Tamar, and that they both died. And the Gemara understands from there, like, oh, that must have been a really bad thing to do. Whether they were intentionally doing that because they didn't want to impregnate her, they were intentionally doing that because they didn't want to do yibum. Like we don't really know exactly what was going on, but it's clear that spilling seed, intentionally not ejaculating inside of a woman's vaginal canal, is a halachic issue. Okay, exactly what that means and exactly how strict you are about it. Let's say in the context of sexual relations between husband and wife, when she is tahora, we're talking about like a permissible act that I want to say it's the Ramah, but maybe it's the Shulchan Aruch. So I don't want to say for sure. Speak about the idea of bia lo kadarka, having sexual relations in the not normal way. Many people assume that is referring to anal sex or some other kind of sex. There does seem to be some halachic room for leniency there when it's for the sake of the couple and their sexual enjoyment and pleasure. Some rabbis read that and understand it completely different. Others say once in a while, if it's not your normal way of doing things, there's room for permission. If it's for the sake of the couple growing together in their sexual experience, we're not talking about that. We're talking about intentionally not ejaculating inside the woman for the purpose of birth control. We're trying to not get pregnant, which is exactly the issue. Okay, that's the exact concern. The other halachic concern, which is more of a rabbinic concern, but is something that comes up in a lot of the literature about this, is the idea of natural relations. There's some idea in the halacha that when the relations, like when the intercourse happens, it should happen the normal way, and that the husband, it should feel normal. So if he can feel whatever method or barrier method is present during that experience, then if he can, like, if his penis can feel the diaphragm, or if he can feel the cervical cap, or whatever it is, we'll talk about what these things are in a second, that may be an issue according to some rabbis, and others are less concerned about that. So that's another thing that comes up. And the final concern is about sterilization. It's usher from the Torah for a man to stop himself from being able to impregnate a woman. So generally now that would be a vasectomy. In modern terms, it's considered like saris, I believe is the Hebrew term. It's basically castration from a halachic perspective, and that's a halachic issue on a Torah level. And stopping a woman from becoming pregnant on a like in a permanent way is considered a problem on a rabbinic level. So that would be like tubal ligation, getting your tubes tied. There is room for permission for each of those things in medical need. Generally, we would prefer tying tubes. I think I once, from a friend of a friend, heard of one situation where the medical needs require that the husband get the vasectomy for some reason. But generally speaking, if you do need a permanent form of birth control for medical reasons, you've had too many C-sections, your body can't handle another pregnancy, it would be extremely dangerous for you to have that pregnancy. At that point, they will probably allow for the woman to have her tubes tied much quicker than they're going to allow for the husband to have a vasectomy, which is unfortunate because from what I understand from my non-frum siblings and friends, the vasectomy is way easier, way less invasive, no big deal. Someone in our family had a vasectomy recently, and when we heard about it, my husband was like, thank God that's not mutter. He was like totally freaked out. And this person was like, oh my gosh, it was like so not a big deal. So it's unfortunate that this is not a method that's available to us, but it is not available to us, and it's not going to become available to us. So it's just something to realize. It's a Torah level prohibition. So unless there's a real medical need, you're not going to get permission for that, but other stuff possibly. Okay. I just wanted to show you guys this. Can you see this? Yeah. Okay, so this is a screenshot of the Nishmat website, yoatzot.org. I circled the website for you. There isn't a link that can actually bring you to the family planning page, because here, you guys can see my cursor, when you basically put your mouse over health and halacha, this menu comes down, and then you put your mouse over family planning, and this menu comes down, but there's no way to like put a URL in. That's just a link to the family planning thing. So this was the easiest way I could find to do it. This is a treasure trove of information. It is so well done. In general, this website is unbelievable. I cannot speak more highly about it. It is just so well done. There's a whole Q&A section. There's articles on everything. They link to everything. It's just such an amazing resource. Whenever people ask me questions, this is the first place I go. Similar to when people send me hechshers, they're like at Trader Joe's, they send me hechshers. They're like, do you know if this hechsher is acceptable? I just go on the CRC app, just like you can. I don't have secret information. Sometimes it's not on the CRC app and it's not anywhere else to be found. And then I text my husband, who texts the rabbi who does have secret information. But usually I just look it up for you. And I'm happy to do that if it's something that's hard for you. It really doesn't bother me. I just want you to know that this information is available to you. So if you are considering a new method of birth control, or you're trying to figure out what to do, I just think that this is really a good thing to know exists so that you can check it out and find things on your own. So if you go to yoatzot.org and you go to health and halacha, family planning, this whole list, it talks about permissibility, choosing a method, the different types. We're going to talk about these in a second, but hormones, progesterone only, IUD, hormonal IUD, barrier methods, and it goes into all of the different sort of halachic issues that could come up. It even has a thing down here about hotza'at zera and semen collection. This is for people who are going through fertility treatment and need to use either a condom or some other collection method to collect sperm from the husband in order to use it for the fertility treatment, and exactly how that works. So there's all this information available to you. It's not very detailed. It's just a good starting point to educate yourself enough that then if you want to ask someone a question, you feel like you know what you're talking about. It's like when you go to the doctor it's better if you know a little bit about the issue so that you can ask the right questions. I'm not one of those people who thinks that we should all Google our health issues and think we know more than our doctor. I don't really think that's very helpful or useful. And my sister's an endocrinologist. Oh, for those, I don't know if I mentioned this, my sister and I have a secret partnership. She's an endocrinologist, and she has a zillion from patients. And every time these young from girls from Toronto come to her, a lot of them have PCOS, and they'll start saying, well, I have this thing with, it's my religious need. She's like, oh, Nida, you're talking about like, because you're hoping to get married soon and you want to deal with like how you're going to plan your period on this medication. She's like, my sister's a Rebbitzin. And like, and they all look at her like, who is this woman? And my sister's in like her low cut tank top. And so my sister's an endocrinologist. I call her with questions for my colleagues all the time about hormones. And she calls me with questions all the time for her patients about Nida. And it's like a really lovely partnership. And she's probably one of the most knowledgeable endocrinologists out there who is not from, who does this. So it's just, you know, like there's lots of information out there, but when you go to that doctor, my sister always complains about the patients who come in and are like, this is what's wrong with me. And this is the prescription I need. Like, you're not supposed to Google it and think you're smarter than them. Well, you're also not supposed to Google this and think you're smarter than the Yoetza Halacha who went through a 2-year intensive program and heard from experts around the world about these issues. But if you can go to them and say, I know this, this, and this about these issues, I'm wondering what you think, then they can offer you more information. So I think educating yourself is very important. So I just wanted to show you this website exists. It's an amazing, amazing resource, and you should support Nishmat because they're a great organization. Okay, birth control methods.
Nishmat.org?
Yeah. It's actually, no, yoetzot.org is that website. If you go to nishmat.org, there's a link there to the Yoetzet website, but the Yoetzet Halacha, like women in Halacha, Taharat, Hamishpacha, all of those things, it's its own website. It's jam-packed with information. There's English, Hebrew, Spanish, Russian, I think now. You make sure you click English, and everything is there. Okay. Birth control methods. Okay, so let's talk about barrier methods. So the condom is problematic. The condom is problematic because it is automatically catching the semen, and you have your issue of hotza'at zera levatala, this spilling of seed for no reason. Levatala means like for nothing, for no reason. So that situation is going to be a problem because you are basically collecting the semen before it even has a chance to enter into the woman's body. So halachically, that's basically the same as pulling out and ejaculating on the ground. And the Gemara talks about spilling it on the wood and stones or something like that, which basically means pulling out, right? Which we all learned. I mean, I don't know. I didn't go to from school growing up. I learned in sex ed class growing up that like pulling out is not a good method of birth control because there's something called, they pre-ejaculate and you could get pregnant just from that. So if you're trying not to get pregnant, it's not going to help you, the pulling out thing. The condom may be helpful, but halachically problematic. The only time that I've heard of condoms being given a heter is in terms of medical issues, if there's some sort of sexually transmitted issue, and this is the only way the couple can stay safe or something like that. But generally speaking, this is not something that you're going to find halachic permission for. A diaphragm is basically this like silicone cup that is like an upside down bowl like this, and it goes inside of the woman, and it basically just creates a dome and it covers her cervix. It's used in coordination generally with spermicide. Spermicide is like a non-issue because it's not really a barrier. And it's usually fine, but spermicide on its own isn't super effective, and the diaphragm on its own isn't super effective, but diaphragm plus spermicide gives you a pretty good efficacy in terms of contraception. So the diaphragm is a debate. Some people say, no, this is a problem because the sperm can't get into the woman's uterus, and that's an issue. Other rabbis say, no, the diaphragm is fine because the sperm can get into her vaginal canal. It's just getting blocked from entering her uterus. So it's still in the woman, so that would be acceptable. So it really depends who you ask. The diaphragm is a little bit of like a thing of the past in like modern American OBGYN circles. Many doctors do not recommend it or suggest it to their patients because I think condoms are easier and cheaper and faster, and diaphragms generally need to be fitted. There is a newer one on the market that does not need to be fitted, which is great. But if you go to a doctor who's younger, they're not even going to know how to fit a diaphragm because it's just not something they're taught anymore. In Israel, they're actually still relatively common because of the Orthodox community there. But so if you do want to get a diaphragm, which there are good reasons for because it's non-hormonal. So that's like a really good reason. That is something you can look into. There definitely are people who say it's fine and use it. I personally had permission to use it early in my marriage. I had a lot of issues on a hormonal birth control. It turned out to all be fake, but they thought my eyes were swollen inside and whatever. It took me off of all hormones. It was really inconvenient. I had to go to a neuro-ophthalmologist like every 3 weeks the entire time I lived in Yerushalayim. It was really annoying. And turns out I just have large optic nerves. They're not swollen. That's just how I was born. So anyways, in the meantime, I got permission to use a diaphragm. Full disclosure, anything that requires you to stop what you're doing and go get the birth control method is not great for your marriage. Okay. It's a big mood killer. This is something I tell my colleagues all the time. I think girls, women my age, when we were getting married, were like the pill, the pill, the pill, the pill, the pill. We were all going on the pill. Colleagues I teach nowadays who are in their early to mid 20s are very, very aware of some of the side effects of hormones. Nobody talked to me about the side effects of hormones. They are like much more concerned about going on the pill. And so they're really looking into exploring different options, much more so than any of my friends did in my day when we were first getting married. And I think the diaphragm is a really good option for short-term birth control needs. Let's say you're in between children, you don't want to get pregnant right now, but you don't intend for it to be a long-term thing. But it's just something you need to know. Like, unless you're not gonna like put it in every night before bed. Like, that's just like, you're not going to do that. It's annoying to put in, it's annoying to take out. Like, you're not doing that. So like, you're going to be like, in the mood, getting going, and then all of a sudden you're like, hold that thought, be right back. It's not great, but it is a good option for all the other reasons. Not a single form of birth control really is, great at everything. Let's be honest. Okay, hormonal. The combination pill is something that people are most familiar with. It's a combination of estrogen and progesterone. I just listened to a podcast the other day. It's called Intimate Judaism. It's a podcast all about intimacy in Judaism. It's a little bit liberal and left-wing leaning, just as a heads up for those of you who want to check it out. Some of what halakhically, they don't really say anything so concerning. One of the women, it's a rabbi and a woman who used to be a pelvic floor physical therapist and is now a sex therapist. She is Orthodox, but she's very, very left leaning. And she often comes across as a little bit like, I was telling Sara the other day, she's like a little bit like angry at the institution. Not like in an angry way, but her questions are very kind of combative, and it makes me a little bit frustrated sometimes because I actually agree with a lot of what she's saying. And like anyone who knows me knows I'm like not very right wing, but it's just that her preconceived notion about everything is just like everyone's evil, everyone's bad, everyone's out to get the women. And like, I just don't feel that that's the case. So I just want to give you a heads up. That being said, it is a fantastic podcast, very informative, very willing to talk about all the things nobody wants to talk about in the Orthodox world that are really important and pressing. Don't listen to it with your kids in the car, but do listen to it. I guess it depends how old your kids are, but don't listen to it with your kids in the car. But it is worth checking out. So they had a 2-part series on birth control and halacha, conveniently came out like recently, right before I was preparing for this. So I listened to it, and they interviewed a doctor who I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. And she spoke about all these different methods. And she was talking about how there's so many versions of the combination pill. And oftentimes women will try one version. They'll try a less, or they'll try, I don't know, what are all those other ones everybody knows about? All these birth control pills that are very popular, and it won't go well for them. They'll either have mood issues, or they'll have weight gain issues, or they'll have some other kind of side effect. And they'll be like, I can't take birth control. Hormones are not for me. And then she was saying like, each kind, there's like maybe over 50 options on the market. Each one of them is either a different dosage of estrogen and progesterone, and then also there are multiple types of the progesterone. There are different versions of it. I know when I was first, before I had swollen optic nerves that weren't swollen, I had terrible nausea from my birth control pill, and it turned out it was the type of progesterone I was on. And as soon as my doctor switched me to a different brand and it was a different type of progesterone, I was totally fine. So it's just important to be working with a medical professional who knows enough about this. Often doctors have their go-to pill that they'll first prescribe to people, and then they'll work from there. But don't just assume just because you had one negative experience with one birth control pill that like you can't take the pill. I'm not saying it's going to be a super easy process, but there are a lot of benefits, especially for a woman to be on a combination pill. I have a chat. I'm going to just check what that message says. Okay, the podcast somebody just asked me is called, I'm writing it in the chat for everyone, Intimate Judaism. It's with Tali Rosenbaum and Rabbi Scott Kahn. So the birth control, the combined birth control pill is just something that if you're willing to give it a little bit of time, you may find something that's fantastic for you, which means you can manipulate your cycle. If you're going on vacation, you have a sibling's wedding, something's coming up and you want to be sure not to be NIDA, there's a lot of benefits to that. And so I just wanted to say that. The mini pill, or the progesterone only pill, does tend to either cause people to not bleed at all or cause people insane amounts of spotting. So the only way to find out which one of those people you are is to try it. Many people are put on it postpartum because if they want to nurse, it's a low dose. It has no estrogen, which is known to not mess with your breast milk. Most recent studies, at least since my third was born, she's 6 now, seem to indicate that that's not necessarily true for all women. And women who don't have a milk supply issue, doctors are becoming more and more comfortable letting them be on the combination pill, which is a little better because the progesterone only pill is just super sensitive. Like if you were like even an hour late, you could like really mess yourself up and spot for like 5 days because of it. So it's just, some people don't have that issue, but many people do find that's an issue on the mini pill, which is progesterone only mini pill are the same thing. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay. So that's the hormonal birth control pill. Somebody sent me a very good question. They said, what happens if I'm on the hormonal birth control pill? I take my active pills, let's call it, for 3 weeks. And then during my placebo week, I take the placebo, but I don't bleed. I might spot a little bit. It's usually like brown or like a dark reddish purplish color, they said. And then I don't see any red blood, and I don't even need a pad, and I don't need a tampon for sure. Like, am I nida? So I wish I could be like, no, you're not. It's a machloket. Obviously, everything in Judaism is machloket. This also, some rabbis will tell you like, well, that's your version of a period. And therefore, you're on the placebo, you're having, it's actually not a period. It's like a estrogen let down bleed. It's not the same thing technically because you don't ovulate on the birth control pill, but whatever, we'll call it a period. You don't, other people will say, no, that's not a period. It doesn't qualify as blood because it's not red and it's fine. You can ignore it. So if you're asking me, message me privately and I will ask that question specifically for you of the rabbi that I usually speak to. If you have a rabbi you usually go to with your questions, you should ask that rabbi or that yoetzet halacha, because there are different opinions about this issue. But generally speaking, if you're not seeing any red, you should be good to go. While you are spotting, you should not be together. You don't have to keep the harchakos, but you shouldn't be having sex. And once 24 hours have passed spotting free, you're considered good to go. And you are not nida, according to many opinions, but it is worth, if you want me to ask a specific shaila for you, send me a message and we'll work it out. I don't know who wrote the question, so I couldn't reach out to you privately, but that's basically, my husband's siblings always make fun of him every shaila they ask. He always starts with, it's complicated. So this one also, it's complicated. It's just different opinions about how we define your period when you're on the birth control pill. But I'm pretty confident that you're fine and you're good to go, but it's worth asking. Okay. Hormonal IUD. The hormonal IUD for many women is a godsend because they find that after the initial few months of like crazy spotting that they sometimes experience, they do not bleed at all on the hormonal IUD. The hormonal IUD, there's a couple different ones. And I think, trying to remember what she said, either it's all estrogen and progesterone or just progesterone in the hormonal IUD, and it emits the hormones locally. So some people find that even if they have reactions to the hormones of the pill, they don't have a reaction to the hormonal IUD because it's just local hormones as opposed to going into your bloodstream and going through your whole body. Other people say they still do experience effects of it. So it's just something to be aware of. If you feel super sensitive to hormones, you may be better off not trying it. If you want to give it a try, I've heard amazing things. One thing to just know about the hormonal IUD is that when you have it inserted, many doctors will tell you to insert it during your period because they say your cervix is more open during your period. It's easier to get in. That is a really bad idea from a halachic perspective, because if you get the hormonal IUD in and you start spotting from it, some women find that they spot for like 3 months. They don't get a period, but they spot and spot and spot and spot. And if you put it in when you were nida, you're going to have a really hard time getting a 7 clean days. So if you can't get a 7 clean days, you're never making it to the mikveh, or it's going to be very hard to make it to the mikveh. If you've gone to the mikveh, you should insert your IUD as soon afterwards as possible, so that this doctor was saying on this podcast, I thought that was so interesting. I never thought of it before. She said, as you get further from your mikveh, your uterine lining is building up more and more and more. So there's more of it left to sort of start shedding and spotting. Early after the mikveh, your uterine lining has only built up a little bit. So any spotting you experience from the IUD should hopefully be more minimal because there was less blood kind of there in the first place. So if you insert it right after the mikveh, that is the most ideal time. She was claiming that your cervix is a hole. Like you could get pregnant at any time. Like your cervix doesn't like actually close. Like we could get the IUD in, it's no problem. So we should insert the IUD immediately after going to the mikveh, so that then you wear colored underwear and you're going to wear panty liners and you're not going to look when you wipe. And it's going to be annoying that you're spotting for a little bit, but you're going to be tahora. You're going to be able to hug and kiss. You're going to be able to share a bed. You're going to be able to eat off the same plate and eat from the same bowl of popcorn. Like your life is just easier when you're not nida, even if you're not able to have sex. I'm not saying that's great, but it's easier. So that's just something to keep in mind. The NuvaRing is a small ring that you insert yourself for 3 weeks. It sits like near your cervix and it emits hormones locally as well. And then you take it out for a week, just like the placebo week of your birth control pill. Many women prefer this method because they don't have to remember to take their pill, but it's still something that's like, you can stop whenever you want. You can start whenever you want. Like the pill, you don't have to go back to the doctor to get your IUD taken out. It's just like done, good, whatever. When you do have a NuvaRing in, you should go on the Yoetzet website and read up about it because there are specific guidelines about doing badikot with the NuvaRing in. You cannot have it in when you're in the mikvah, it's considered chatzitza. So those are things that you should be keeping in mind if you're going to use a NuvaRing. Nexplanon is an implant in your arm that lasts like 5 years that also emits hormones. And I don't know a lot about it, but it is an option that some women really like. You don't have to remember to take the pill. It's long-term. You don't have to like keep changing the NuvaRing, keep going to the pharmacy to get more NuvaRings, etc. But
do you get your period on that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it varies depending on the woman. I think similar to the IUD, the only way to know is to be on it. Okay, non-hormonal options. The non-hormonal IUD, benefits of the non-hormonal IUD, no hormones, no hormones. It works with copper. One of the problems with it is basically, from what I understand from this podcast I listened to the other day, the copper creates some sort of chemical reaction in your uterus that just makes your uterus inhospitable to embryos. So like, that's why you don't get pregnant. The problem with it is it causes a lot more of a uterine lining, and people on the non-hormonal copper IUD have crazy periods. Their periods tend to be longer. They tend to have a lot more cramping. So on the one hand, it's great because you don't have to remember to take your pill. It's a long-term method of birth control and you don't have to worry about hormones. But on the other hand, if you're somebody who does not enjoy being nida and you're somebody who does not enjoy having her period, this is not going to solve any of those problems for you. Okay, rhythm method or the fertility awareness method. These are methods where you basically, it's really the fertility awareness method is like the newer version and the better version, but the rhythm method is still a thing. Apparently the rhythm method was very popular in the Catholic Church in like the 60s and 70s. Anyways, fertility awareness method is basically paying attention to your discharge, your basal body temperature when you wake up every morning, and knowing your body well enough to know when you're ovulating and when you're not, and when you're fertile and when you're not, and basically abstaining from sex when you are fertile in order to prevent yourself from getting pregnant. It involves a lot of work, in my opinion. I'm more of like the give me a pill and I don't want to think about this kind of girl, but I can understand those people who are a little bit more in touch with their bodies, really like this is like a really good fit for them. It's nice to know exactly what's going on in your body. Having awareness of your body can only be healthy. And it means you don't have to put anything foreign into your body or use any kind of weird chemical type stuff. And people who really know what they're doing with the fertility awareness method, like really swear by it. They say it really, really works. But obviously if you're spacey like me and you forget to take that basal body temperature or whatever, then like, if, you know, it depends how badly you don't want to get pregnant. That was what this doctor was saying. She's like, you have to weigh, like, what's the most important thing for you? Are you on birth control? Because like, absolutely no way can you have a child right now that will cause undue stress or medical issue or whatever, or like, you don't want to get pregnant right now, but like, if you happen to get pregnant by accident, would it be the end of the world? Like, no, we would welcome another baby into our family. Like, those are different people who have different approaches to birth control and should choose their method of birth control based on how like effective it is, depending on their situation. So I'm just giving you like an overview of these things that exist, so you know what's out there and you should look into it more. You're welcome to call me to discuss more. I'm by no stretch of the imagination an expert on birth control. I maybe was like 8 years ago when I first took my college teacher training, but there's so many things that exist now that didn't exist then. But I can give you the phone numbers of all my Yoetzet friends who know way more than I do. And I call them with all my questions and everyone else's questions. So we can all call them together. Okay. Okay. Sex and Judaism. This is why we're really here. Okay. Sharing is pause. Bring your shared window back to the front. Where did Chrome go? There we go. Sorry, everyone. Okay. Okay. I had in my purse there. Is there a piece of paper inside it? I had some notes that were like in a Word doc and I just printed them instead of making slides for this because it doesn't require a lot. Okay, what I basically want to talk about is a hashkafa on sex. Okay, it's going to be short. I would give you a lot more if this was your Kala class, and I think there's way more to talk about. But I really think that often we spend so much time, I said this in our first class, we spend so much time on the don'ts, so much time thinking about like how to get to the mikvah, what to do with the mikvah, but like Judaism doesn't just care about the don'ts. We really care about the do's. And I just want to kind of prove that to you and then encourage you to really work on that area of your marriage as like kind of like conclusion to this conversation. So there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says Mayim Genuvim Yimtaku, this idea that stolen water is sweeter. And the Gemara talks about this idea that like when something's taken away from you, that makes it even sweeter, right? Like the kids whose parents give them like nonstop snacks and I don't like to use the word junk food, even though I say it all the time by accident, but the kids whose parents give them tons of like treats and yummy food all the time tend not to crave it the way the kids who like have no candy in their house, like go to shul and they see the candy at groups and they're like going crazy and their eyes are like popping out of their head, right? Because when you don't have access to something, you want it that much more. It's just basic human nature. And I think that the Gemara says like Hashem in his wisdom made us the forbidden thing so that we would crave each other. Because if he didn't make it, we would get bored of it. It wouldn't be important to us. And there would be other things that we would crave and sort of go look to. And it would be the extramarital relationships that we would sort of crave. But by building this into our own marriage, it's something that we sort of, by building it into our own marriage, we're sort of creating this situation where we have to be separated in order to enhance the togetherness. So it's not just like, oh, that first night after the mikvah is like your wedding night, but it's more than that. It's being able to appreciate what you have in your physical relationship, aside from the like sexual part of it, but just the physical contact and that specialness that exists only between the husband and the wife. Eating each other's French fries off their plates. My husband and I were at a wedding last night and I always steal, there's always mashed potatoes at weddings. Anybody notice that? Yeah. And I'm obsessed with potatoes. Like I will eat any form of potato at any time, like nonstop. And my husband, every time he like turns to talk to someone at a wedding, I like steal his mashed potatoes off his plate. So last night I like did that. Like, and I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm going to be giving this year tonight, like, the person sitting next to me is a friend of mine. Like I would never steal her mashed potatoes off her plate. Like that would be so awkward. So that's just, you know, something that like really is an intimacy that exists just between us. That's sort of special. So I just kind of wanted to talk about this togetherness in general and this idea of pleasure in Judaism. I meant to bring the book to show you, but there's an amazing, it's a very short book. It's called Marital Intimacy. It's by Rabbi Friedman, Avraham Peretz Friedman or something like that. It's excellent. And he talks about basically pleasure in Judaism. What is pleasure in Judaism and how do we view pleasure, right? Most people assume religion thinks pleasure bad, right? Because that comes from the Catholic and Christian way of seeing things. In the Catholic faith, the priests like and the nuns and the monks, the holiest people, separate themselves from physical needs. They do these like fasts for multiple days and they take a vow of celibacy and they're not allowed to like drink wine and they kind of have this like, they put their religious figures on a pedestal that they're somehow able to separate themselves, their spiritual self from their physical self. And in Judaism, we don't really have that. We have the concept of a Nazir, but like it's almost frowned upon to become a Nazir, right? And we don't do that nowadays. Other than that, we really don't have that concept. And really like the holiest rabbis have the most kids, right? Which like, according to my daughter, who had her first sex talk a couple of years ago, she's like, oh, I was pregnant with Ezzy at the time. She was like, so you and Abba did that 4 times? And I was like, no, it was maybe a little more. I was like trying to like really give her like a well-rounded sex talk that it wasn't just about making babies, but it was also about pleasure and showing love for one another. It went totally over her head. And I didn't want to like freak her out and make her feel uncomfortable. So I was just kind of like, well, maybe a little more than that. And I like moved on from that part of the conversation. But like, it was a very funny conversation. Anybody who wants tips about how to have that conversation, I don't have many, but I can tell you how mine went. So I think this idea that like we assume that in Judaism, it's a positive thing to have many children. It's a beautiful thing to have many children, but that indicates that there's sex going on in those families, which like nobody wants to talk about it and nobody wants to think about it when they're looking at another couple. You don't want to think about them in that way, but it's a reality that exists in our religion that we don't separate it from our lives. It's considered part of our lives and is a beautiful part of our lives. And it's a mitzvah. It's not just a mitzvah to have children. There is a mitzvah to have children, but there's the mitzvah of Ona. It's a separate mitzvah about the husband giving his wife her sexual satisfaction, which, obviously, even though that's not part of the mitzvah, you should also do the same for your husband. It's a reciprocal relationship. So it's something that we very much value and that we almost put on a pedestal to some extent. And it's very different from how people usually assume that in religion, it's bad, it's negative, it's dirty, you don't do it. Anybody who's really holy doesn't do this. Obviously, it's supposed to be within reason. There's some sources that talk about just like you shouldn't eat like nonstop stuff your face and be like a total glutton with food. You also shouldn't do that with sexuality, but there is a beauty to it. And it's viewed as something that can bring a couple closer together and make their marriage enhanced. So he talks about this idea that like in Western society, what is pleasure? Pleasure is like the point of everything. Everyone is seeking pleasure in and of itself. And like they put so much, if you think about everything we do and the world does, our time and our energy and our attention, our imagination, our resources, everything and money, it's all going towards seeking out this pleasure. And sometimes because of that, there might be some responsibilities or obligations that like you have to do in order to achieve that pleasure. You might have to pay money to be able to go to the basketball game. You might have to, like treat the girl nicely in order to get her into bed. Like there are things you might have to do. I'm not trying to suggest that like everybody who isn't religious has like no sexual ethic. I really don't believe that to be true. I think it's much more complicated than that, but I'm just, for the sake of argument. Then you look at Judaism, right? Do we say pleasure is bad? No, but is it the point of everything? No. So the way he puts it in this book, I think is so beautiful. He says, what's the point of life? To fulfill Hashem's will. Okay, that's the point of life. We want to fulfill Hashem's will. Great. What happens when you fulfill Hashem's will? If you do it well, many times, not always, but many times, an enjoyable sort of side effect of trying to fulfill Hashem's will is like this pleasure. It's like an unwelcome, like not unwelcome byproduct, he calls it, that accompanies and results from proper observance and fulfillment of God's obligations. Meaning you can have sukkahs. I'm giving this example. This is my favorite holiday, right? Like, those beautiful nights when you're sitting in the sukkah and it just feels like so perfect. It's like the perfect weather and you're sitting around with like either family or friends and like your sukkah feels no, I know. There was one nice night this sukkah is really nice. And I'm coming from Canada where like we have space heaters and winter coats in the sukkah a lot of the time and it's like snowing on us. So like it's hard to find that perfect. You know where sukkah is perfect? In Israel. But you're sitting in the sukkah and like you just look around and you just feel this sense of like completion, like the food's on the table, everyone's enjoying themselves. Your sukkah is so simple but so beautiful. Like there's just something so lovely about that. You're doing a mitzvah. Your entire body is currently doing a mitzvah of like leishev b'sukkah, but you also enjoy that mitzvah. You might enjoy lighting Shabbos candles. You might enjoy Havdalah. You might enjoy tefillah. Like there's so many things that we get pleasure from, but we're doing them because it's an obligation. And the reason we do them is because it's an obligation, but we get to enjoy them in the process. So that's just something that pleasure is something, and Chazal celebrate this. They talk all the time about how it's so good to have simcha shel mitzvah. You should enjoy the mitzvot. You should have simcha when you're doing the mitzvot. They don't say the point of life is simcha. They say the point of life is mitzvot. But great if it's enjoyable for you. Hidur mitzvah, you should get beautiful kiddush cups and beautiful etrog and a beautiful this. Like we want it to be able to enjoy it. We embrace the physical and we embrace the pleasure, but it's not the whole point of everything. And that's sort of the difference between us and like modern Western society in a lot of ways. It's not the point, but it's a beautiful thing that we enjoy and that we encourage enjoying. And if you think about it, I put this source here. What was the first mitzvah ever given to people? The first mitzvah ever to human beings. I'm putting you on the spot. What's the first thing that happens in the Torah? Adam and Chava. What was the mitzvah they were given?
Puvu.
Here we go. Go ahead, Jamie.
Puvu.
Okay, Puravu. And what else? Then what does Hashem tell them?
Blanking.
Puravu after. They're not allowed to eat from the tree.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. So they're not allowed to eat from the tree. So look really carefully at the pasuk here, okay? I'm going to read it in the Hebrew, but follow along in the English underneath if you want. V'yikach Hashem Elokim et Adam, v'yinicheu b'gan eden la'avda u'lashamra. Hashem takes Adam, puts him in Gan Eden to work it and to guard it. That's our source for environmentalism. Okay. V'yatzav Hashem Elokim al ha'adam le'mor. And Hashem commanded Adam, saying, Mikol eitz hagan achol tochel. From all the trees of the garden, you shall surely eat, or you may eat, or you should eat. Okay, v'yitzav, he commanded him, eat from the trees. And then he says, u'me'etz hada'at tov v'ra lo tochel. And from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you should not eat. Ki biyom achalcha mimenu mot tamut. Because on the day you eat from it, you're going to die. You shall surely die. Okay, so that's this mitzvah, this first thing. So what's the first thing Adam and Chava do? Oh, good job, guys. They ate from the tree, okay? track record of humans. I was speaking to my uncle the other day, who's not from, but is like the most spiritual person I know. He always calls me with these like Talmudic questions. And like, I never know the answers. He has such good questions. We were talking about environmentalism. We were talking about like all these different things. He's like so amazing. And he said to me, I said to him, like, listen, like human beings don't have a good track record. Like we really suck. And he's like, why would you say that? I'm like, I don't know. It took us one generation to figure out murder. Like, how awful is that? So he's like, oh, that's a terrible point. But what happens with Adam and Chava? So they were told you can eat from all the trees. And then they're told, and don't eat from this one tree. So the Meshech Chochmah says something amazing. He says, they thought that the eating from the trees was just like something you can do if you want. That's how this translates it. I don't like this translation. It says you may freely eat, but then it says you shall surely die. But mut tamut and achol tochel are the same form of the verb. It means really do this action. Really do this action. You're really going to die and you should really, really eat. Meshech Chochmah says it was a mitzvah aseh, a positive mitzvah to eat from the trees. And it was a negative mitzvah to not eat from one tree. And he says if they would have focused on appreciating all that was available to them and enjoyed and had the pleasure from all that was available to them, they wouldn't have been so focused on the one thing they couldn't have. But they forgot to do all the positive that they could only think about the negative. And that's where their downfall came. And this idea that like pleasure, Hashem, the first thing Hashem said to them wasn't don't, it was do. It was, here's all the good stuff for you. Here's all the stuff you can enjoy. Here's all the stuff that I want you to have. And they sort of messed up because they didn't appreciate that. And they didn't take the opportunity to like, you know, be mindful as they enjoyed that apple that they were allowed to eat. But if we can be mindful of all the things we're allowed to have and be mindful during the times that we are together with our spouses, it will help us when we're not able to be together. But there is a value of pleasure. It isn't just something you have to do to make babies. It's something that Hashem gave us. He could have made the sexual act something that just like naturally we did and didn't have any pleasure. And just like, you know, every 3 years, we just create babies. Like that could have just been the way he created us. And he didn't create us that way. He created us, first of all, with pregnancy, fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum to be difficult. That's maybe Chava's fault, but okay. But aside from that, he also, what'd you say? He gave us our body parts. He gave us the pleasure. Like if you look at, there's people either pronounce it clitoris or clitoris, but it's an unbelievable organ. And it is proof that Hashem wants us to enjoy because it has absolutely no purpose whatsoever in terms of procreation. It is just a pleasure organ. That is its sole existence. And it only looks like a tiny little ball of like nothing, like in what you can see, but it stretches back and its nerve endings go all the way up and around your pelvic area to be able to give you so much pleasure. Hashem created that. Like this is, Hashem wanted us to enjoy and he wanted us to experience it, but he wanted us to be able to do it in a kadosh way. And just like we say kiddush on wine, and we have a seuda, like a meal to show our appreciation for Hashem when somebody's saved from an illness or saved from a car accident. We have a seudat hoda'ah, right? We always use physicality in Judaism to elevate it to a spiritual level. We use food as a way to celebrate. At a wedding, that's a seudat mitzvah. At a bris, that's a seudat mitzvah. It's this idea of like taking what we need to do physically as physical creations, as human beings, and using it for the spiritual purposes. And that is what Judaism is all about. It's about merging physical and spiritual. Christianity is like, if you're really holy, you just take your spiritual and you get it away from the physical. We're like, no, the holier you are, the more you're able to make the physical into something spiritual. And the sex drive is part of that. And it's part of the whole experience of pleasure in general. So I think that it's just something to think about. You know, there's all these sources that talk about like, when a husband and wife are together, but Taharat, like, and they do it at the right time and they do it for the right reasons, for love, the Shekhinah is there with them. This idea that the sexual act itself is holy is something that's like, so I think, I don't know what other religions say, but like, it feels so unique to Judaism that we could say that something that feels to us like the farthest thing from is actually so from, like, to just put it in like basic terms. And we don't think about it this way. And our education system really messes us up because we grow up being taught, be modest, be modest, be modest, be modest. Don't touch boys, don't talk to boys, be modest, be modest, be modest. Maybe that's what your school's teaching you. Maybe they're not being as extreme, but there's a sense of sex bad, right? Wait till you're married. Okay, it's true. When you're not married, you should not be active sexually. That is 100% true. And there are 100 million reasons why that's true from a halachic perspective, from a psychological perspective, fine. But it's, how are we supposed to then get married and be like, okay, let's flip a switch. Now sex, it's a good thing. You should feel great about it. So many people have so much sort of like inner trauma about being sexually active and being open and being themselves in the bedroom with their spouse, because they spent their whole life trying to shut that drive down. And now suddenly they have to wake it back up. And so I think that, first of all, this is just something to be aware of, that as you speak to your children, especially daughters, how we communicate with them about their private parts, about sexuality, about masturbation, like these things are really going to affect them in their married lives. And if you see that in your own experience, just to think about that and to read up on how to educate our children. I didn't put this in the slides, but there are a couple of resources out there about talking to our kids about puberty from perspectives, talking to kids about puberty, about sexuality, that are just such amazing resources. Some of them cost money, but I believe it's a worthwhile investment in our kids' future and their psychological health. So just sort of a plug for that, but also like this idea of sex in Judaism being like, it's a part of the marriage. It's not just something we also do when we're married, but it's like integral to the marriage. And we talked about this idea of like the Re'im Ahuvim, and it's also in Gila Rina Ditza V'chedba, Ahava Achva Shalom V'Reus. That's another bracha from Sheva Brachos, right? Gila Rina Ditza V'chedba, all of this kinds of joy that you experience, the sort of ecstasy of the sexual, physical experience between husband and wife. And you kind of counterbalance that with like ahava, love, achva, brotherhood, shalom v'reu, peace and friendship. Like those are the two elements of our marriage. If we have too much of the physical and not enough of the friendship side of things, that's not so healthy. We have too much of the friendship side of things and none of the physical, that's also not healthy. What makes this relationship different than another friendship is that intimacy, is that physical experience. And so I think that it's just something that I really encourage all of us to make time for. I remember once one of my teachers who taught me how to be a college teacher, I think I said this last time I gave a class, she said, think about all the things you can outsource. You can send your laundry to a laundry service or get a housekeeper to do your laundry. You can pick up takeout from a store. You can find someone to babysit your kids. You can basically, I even like my two older kids, my younger daughter doesn't know how to ride a bike yet because we're so bad and I haven't taught her, she's 6. My other two, they learned how to ride a bike at a bike riding camp in Toronto over the summer. We didn't even teach our kids how to ride their own bike. Okay, we outsourced it. And I'm fine with that. My mom's always like, how could you not? I'm like, I don't know. They had fun. They went to camp all day. They left me alone and they came home riding bikes. It's all good. But what can you not, chas v'shalom, ever outsource is a physical relationship between you and your spouse. Like you don't want someone else taking your place doing that. And that's something to just realize, like we always have this long list of things we have to accomplish between the laundry and the kids' appointments and the personal appointments and work and job stuff and house stuff and home ownership and like, I don't know, everything, or car insurance expired. We need a new car insurance. Like there's always 100 million things on the list to do. And our sexual physical relationship always just gets bumped down and bumped down and bumped down and bumped down. And her point was, look at that to-do list you have, if you're organized enough to write it down, because I'm certainly not. But look at that to-do list that you have. How many of those things can you pay someone else to do for you, or ask someone else to help you with, or find a way to creatively do it a little bit differently? You can't pay anyone to be physically intimate with your spouse. And so if you, and well, I guess you can, you should not. Right? Yeah, you could hire him an escort. Please don't do that. Nobody quote me saying somebody's gonna like take a clip of this recording and like just say, like Sarah said, you should hire a husband escort. I did not say that. But you can't outsource that. So why do we let it get further and further and further down our list and not prioritize it? And I wish I could be speaking to the men too. If you want to send them this recording, feel free. Like I really feel that we all need to make this a real central part of our marriage, because it contributes to the friendship side of things. And when things are good in the bedroom, things are good out of bedroom, and things are bad out of the bedroom, we all know they're not so good in the bedroom. It's a cycle. And we need this sort of ability to come together and think about these things. I have a friend, I shared this with somebody the other day, who when she needs to tell her husband when things aren't like going well sexually, she like takes out beer. She doesn't really drink beer. And she's like, she gives him a beer and she's like, we need to have a chat, man to man. It's like, and he knows it's a joke. And it was her only way of having this uncomfortable conversation, because like she couldn't really have it, but if she could make a joke of it and pretend to be another guy and have like a sex talk as two guys, then like that maybe that they could just laugh about it, but she could still convey her message. And this is something she and her husband do on occasion. She did it once early in their marriage and she still does it. I know if I did that, I would just like crack up the whole time. It wouldn't work for me and my husband, but like you have to find ways to communicate about these things, about how to share this stuff with each other and how to grow with each other and to share your needs. And sometimes that's comfortable in the moment. He's doing something sexually that doesn't feel right for you. Sometimes you need to talk about it when you're fully clothed, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. Like you have to figure out when and where it's the right time to raise these things and talk about these things, and also figure out for you, what's holding you back from really being yourself during sexual encounters. What's making you feel like you can't really be present because you're too exhausted, you're too tired. Like you don't need to make a 5-course Shabbos meal. If you can't afford takeout, I totally get that. You don't need to cook as much as we all cook. We all do it. So give yourself a week off and invest instead in taking a bath or going for a massage or doing something to make yourself feel good, so that by the time evening comes and if you have children, put your kids to bed, or you've finished cleaning up from dinner or whatever it is, you and your husband can just enjoy each other. And you don't feel like I remember when we were first married, I didn't know how to cook, and it took me forever and ever to make the most simple dishes because I just didn't know what I was doing in the kitchen. And I would literally fall asleep with my forehead on the table at the Shabbos table every week. It would just be me and my husband, and would wake up like 3 hours later and he would be in bed fast asleep, and I would still be at the dining room table like asleep like this because I just like ran myself ragged. And finally he just started saying like, I'm picking up takeout this week. Like, you're crazy. Like, this is enough. And I didn't want him to do that because to me, like, I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to make Shabbos before I had a family of my own that I had to cook for. And like, I was so obsessed with this image, and it was like so misplaced. And I think that whether it's Shabbos or a different day of the week, like turning off your phone, making yourself available, like everybody talks about this stuff, date night, whatever, but like how many of us really carry through and do it? Like, I can't even tell you how many times my husband and I cancel on each other. Like, we'll make a date in the middle of the day because we have the flexibility to do that. And that's easier for us than nights, because nights we're doing this. And and we'll like say, okay, Wednesday, we're going for lunch together, just the two of us. And then someone calls the shul and they have an issue and they have a crisis, or I get a call from someone, and like, lo and behold, our lunch turns into a coffee, turns into we're going to go in the car together to pick up carpool so we can chat for the 15-minute ride on the way there. And like, that's so sad. Like, we need to all prioritize our relationships in general, but our sexual relationship in specific. So enough of my musser schmooze. I wanted to share, this event is happening in a couple weeks, and I saw it come up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like such perfect timing for us. This is put on by JAWMA, Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association. They're an unbelievable organization. If you are in the medical world and you want to join them, I think they are taking members. I'm not, but they have put on so many, and all the recordings are on their website. So many amazing webinars about sexual health, women's health in general. They had something on breast cancer recently, I think, but every year they do a sexual health webinar. I strongly encourage you to look at the recording of last year's. It was a lot about basic anatomy and just like basic sort of concepts of women and sexuality. And this one is on February 6th. And if you register, they send you a recording afterwards. So even if you can't make it on that date, go on their website and register. It's jama.org/women's health. This link up here that has the dash is wrong. I tried it today. It doesn't work. You got to do this link down here, and I can send out the link again for anyone who's interested. They are not a halachic organization, so they sometimes will say things that are normal for doctors to say, but maybe not normal for, rabbis to say. So just take that with a grain of salt. Like, they're not there, and they will say that they are not there to teach you what halacha says about things. They're there to teach you what science and medicine and biology say about these things. But the more that we can invest in ourselves and in our sexual experience and in our sexual knowledge and comfort with our own bodies, then we can share that with our husbands. And hopefully they can do the same for themselves and share that with us. And that can create a stronger, better bond between the couple in general. So I just saw this come up like literally on my Instagram feed like yesterday. And I was like, oh, like Hashem wanted me to see this now. So I just screenshotted it because I thought it was worth seeing. Obviously there are lots of other resources out there. If you feel that sex therapy or therapy in general is something you guys could benefit from as a couple, that's something I really strongly encourage you to pursue as well. If you need some names, I'm happy to make some recommendations privately. I really feel that Nida is like it is a big part of our lives. I'm not suggesting that it's not, but it's such a small part of what Torah has to say about our marital relationships. And so much of color classes and so much of our lives during our reproductive years gets focused on either nida or fertility or like these things. And sometimes we forget that Judaism really does want us to have strong, great relationships with our spouses and to be continuing to grow in that way. And I just really encourage everyone to really make an effort, say in the next month, I'm going to read a book about this. I also meant to bring that book. It's sitting on my dining room table. It's a great book. If you feel like you never got a good basic sex ed education, you can buy it used online for super cheap. It's called What Your Mother Never Taught You About Sex. And it's everything about women and sexuality. It talks about orgasms. It talks about your anatomy. It's just a great basic book. And then obviously there are lots of other books and resources out there. There's also a fantastic Facebook group called Jewish Women Talk Frankly About Intimacy, I believe it's called. You need to be invited into the group, and they do screen you to make sure that you are female and that you are not a joint account with your husband. They will not allow you in. They have very strict rules about screenshotting any messages or anything like that. They have anonymous moderators. You can message them privately and they'll post your question anonymously, or you can just post for yourself. And women ask everything on there. It's such a beautiful thing to see from women supporting each other and talking about things like vibrators and orgasms and sexual issues that they might be experiencing or that their husband's experiencing and they're not sure how to support him. And it's just like amazing to see these women who mostly probably don't know each other in real life, who are sharing these ideas with each other and just like sharing their knowledge and their experience and just validating each other, because this is such a hard issue. I see there's a question in the chat. I'm going to check it in 1 second. They see that there is, like you feel so alone when you think you're the only one going through something like this, and to know that there are other people who get it and who've experienced it as well is just so powerful. So if you're on Facebook and you want to be added to that group, send me a message and I'll find out how to get you added. I forget what the protocol is, but they are like kind of strict because they just want to make sure that people feel like safe and comfortable really posting and saying things honestly there. So if you ever like screenshot and they find out about it, you get kicked out of the group immediately. Like they're really very good about that. So, there's a lot of support and resources out there. I feel like the frum world has come so far in terms of talking openly about sexuality, talking openly about any kind of like sexual health issues that people have, but we obviously still have a ways to go. And there is value to the privacy and there is value to the tznius. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be, but there are ways to get that support and information and help without anybody who you actually know being a part of that. So I think that's a really important thing to just be aware of. And also this webinar, when they do it, it's like a webinar. It's not a regular Zoom. So nobody can see who else is on. So if you're worried about that, nobody will know you're there. They don't, like, I guess the people from the office see you sign up, but other than that, nobody's going to know. So it's something I really encourage you to look into. If anybody has any other questions, suggested resources, yoatzot.org is on here. Okay, the Confident Kala, that's who I forgot to talk about. She is from OBGYN. She lives in Wisconsin, but she has an Instagram page with fantastic content. Today, she's posted a whole thing about how to talk to your doctor about Taharat Hamishpacha, and like how she like talks about like exactly what kind of wording to use and sample scripts, because a lot of people will like beat around the bush and the doctor like won't understand. She's like, no, you need to say to your doctor, I am not allowed to have sex while I have my period and for 7 days afterwards. So this birth control method doesn't work for me. What can you do for me? But you have to say it, because if you don't say it, if you're like, well, for religious reasons, like it's kind of like an issue, like they just aren't going to get that it's a big deal for you, and you need to be open with them. Like they've seen and heard it all. Like they literally look inside people's vaginas all day. Like don't be afraid to tell them. And also like they're medical professionals. They have to respect you religiously. And if they're rude to you about your religion, get a new doctor. Like you shouldn't be afraid to tell your doctor that you keep Taharat Hamishpacha. She's amazing. And she now has an online telemedicine practice. She is licensed for Florida. She's only licensed for a few states, but you can make an appointment online with her and like Zoom with her and like talk to her about your medical issues, advice about birth control. She obviously can't insert the birth control for you if you need an insertion, but she can give you advice. Like she knows the halacha, and she's a very experienced OBGYN. So she's awesome. She has posts about C-sections versus natural delivery, fertility issues, like just anything that comes up with OBGYN. She really felt that there was a lack of knowledge and education in the frum world about these issues. She also came out with a course that you watch and then your daughter watches for like 10 to 12-year-old girls about puberty that you can buy from her. And it's like an online, like you do it on your own time, course to how to talk about your puberty with your kids, which I've heard is fantastic. So there's a lot of great resources out there. And then the other organization I just wanted to highlight is PUA. They do a lot of work. We're originally based in Israel, but they now exist in America as well. And they provide a lot of support for fertility issues and the halachic issues that come up surrounding that. They're really, really an excellent resource. If you go on their website, you can find out how to contact their rabbis and speak to them. If you have any kind of like more complicated issues regarding halacha and birth control, halacha and a fertility issue, they really know so much. It's like Rabbi Weitzman, who's one of the head rabbis in Mechon Pua in Israel, goes to medical conferences and presents there, and he does not have a medical degree. That's how much he knows, and they listen to him. He's truly amazing. I was honored to take a course with him when I was in Israel. about medical issues in halacha, and it was fascinating, and his wealth of knowledge is just like insane, and he's so up to date on the latest research and methods of everything. He's amazing, and he trains these other rabbis who are available to speak to. So it's an amazing organization. So I just want to let you all know that exists. Hold on. Okay, you mentioned the extra dip in the mikveh. If you didn't rinse at the mikveh like during COVID, what's the source for that? That's a great question. I do not know offhand what the source is for the extra dip in the mikveh. I'm going to try to find out. I don't know who you are because you only have initials, but if you direct message me your name, I will let you know the answer. And somebody said, please share the resources for sharing info with children. Okay. The thing about puberty, you can find on the Confident Kala website.
Confident Kala?
Yeah, confidentkala.com. Or on Instagram, she's called The Confident Kala. And she also has a Facebook page, but I don't know if she always posts on Facebook or just once in a while. I don't know if it's my algorithm that only shows it to me sometimes, or she's just not consistent about it. She's really on Instagram. That's really where you're going to find her. She stories all the time. She posts polls that are fascinating. She's really awesome. And like, also like, so cool to see a woman who like is from and like really like professionally has like made it work. She talks sometimes about what it was like to like be a young from married woman during residency. Like it's just, she's amazing. Okay. What was the other thing I spoke about sharing information with children? I'm just trying to remember what I said so I can tell you where to find it. Aviva, can you remind me what I said?
You just said you had resources and I want to know them.
Oh, okay. Another resource that is really worth looking at. I know who it is. Elisheva Liss. I should have put her on here. Elisheva Liss. It's not really related to women, so that's why I didn't do it. Hold on a second. Elisheva, I think it's elishevaliss.com. Yes, okay. elishevaliss.com. She is a therapist in the 5 towns. She told me she wants to move to Florida, but I don't think she's done it yet. She's amazing. She's hilarious on Twitter and Instagram. She's just hilarious. So follow her for just like good tongue-in-cheek, cute like one-liners. But Elisheva Liss, she put out an amazing course for parents about, here, let's see, courses. I'm going to share my screen and show you what it is. Hold on, stop share. Now we're going to go share screen. Here it is. Okay, get intimate. Okay, let's get intimate. Know yourself, know others, know your higher purpose. We're here to help. Let's begin our journey one connection at a time. So Sacred Not Secret is a whole course. I think it's pretty extensive. It's not cheap. She sometimes does promos certain points in the year, but I think it's well worth it. I keep meaning to buy it, but I know I'm not going to have the time right now to really properly watch it. So I haven't, but I really do intend to. It's about how to teach your kids about sex and from perspective. So she really does recognize that there's this idea of, privacy in Judaism, but she's saying it's a sacred thing, but it doesn't mean it's a secret thing. And when we teach our kids that you don't talk about sex and you should be embarrassed about sex, and you should be embarrassed that you had an erection, you should be embarrassed that you felt some kind of sexual urge, right? All you're teaching them is that there's something wrong with them and there's something bad about their body. And her whole point is we need to find a way to like keep our religious values, but give our kids a healthy attitude towards sex so that they grow up feeling good about their bodies and not having any kind of sexual dysfunction in their marriages and not having any kinds of like, issues about their own identity and sense of self because of how we've given messages from a young age. Like, what do you say to your kids when they touch themselves in a public place? Like, how do you respond to that? You see your kid touching themselves in the bathtub. Like, what do you say in those situations? And how you respond, if your initial response is like, ew, don't do that. Like, well, what are we teaching them? And what are they going to learn about their body parts? What are they going to think about their body parts, right? So this is kind of the idea behind her course. It's really good. I think it's on here. Start now. She has a sample, like you can watch it. She does like, it's all videos. And then there's like, I think handouts. It's supposed to be amazing. Here, click to take a peek inside. It has all these modules. She talks about all these different things. She's really brilliant. We were going to bring her in at some point. We were going to have her do a panel on sexual something over Zoom, and then it fell through, but maybe we'll try to get her again. She's really amazing. I really respect her a lot. I think she is just a really well, like I've read a ton of her blogs about psychology in general and specifically related to sexuality. And I think she's just excellent. So I have not done the course myself, but I do encourage anybody else who wants to do it before me to do it. Okay, I think that's it. Any other questions? Any questions from the live audience over here?
I just wanted to add another resource.
Oh, another resource. Go ahead.
Anyone that's going through miscarriage,
Mm.
infertility, or stillborn
Right.
situations.
Nechama Comfort.
Nechama Comfort.
Nechama Comfort. Thank you for mentioning that. Nechama Comfort. For those of you, I don't know if anybody remembers, right before COVID, it must have been. I was still pregnant with Ezzy, so it wasn't so soon before COVID. It was like the fall before COVID. We had Reva Judas, who's the head of Nechama Comfort in town, and she spoke at Miriam Unger's house, and she spoke about like how to support family members, friends, members of the community who have gone through any kind of infant loss, pregnancy loss. And she was excellent, and she had a ton of really good, sort of pieces of advice about what not to say, how to be supportive. She's really amazing. She lost a son years ago. Like, I think he would have been my age by now. I think he lived for like 6 hours or something and passed away in the hospital. And she basically found there was just no support in the Jewish community. And she started an organization, and she's amazing. She's really, really amazing. And she's like totally available. Like, anyone who needs to talk to her, she's like, makes herself available. She's really great. And she has a whole organization now. So she also, I can give you her phone number, anybody who needs, but you can also Google Nechama Comfort and you'll find their website and all of their information as well. So thank you for reminding me about that. Okay. Thank you everybody for coming. Sorry we went so long again tonight. I'm going to try to find the source for the extra dip in the mikvah, because I know that that is the thing. I'm going to try to find out what it's from. Again, it is more lechatchila to rinse off at the mikvah if you can. But if you can't for whatever reason, or are very nervous about COVID or whatever the situation is, the extra dip in the mikvah does seem to be. Also, that's what people do on Friday nights. I didn't talk about Friday nights so much, but a lot of people who are going to the mikvah Friday night, they do other preparation Friday afternoon. And when they get to the mikvah, I was taught to shower like with a handheld shower, limb by limb, to rinse off different parts of your body. But other people will just do an extra dip in the mikvah for that. So I'm guessing whatever the source is for that, that's the source for this, but I will try to look into it. Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope this was helpful. If anybody ever has any follow-up questions, that was my last slide. I had my phone number and my email. My email is MSF, like Mrs. Sara Frieberg at yih.org. I did not make my email address. It would never have had an M there. I just think it's weird. But that's what it says. You can always call the shul office to get my contact info, and I'm always happy to help in any way that I can. So thank you for being here. Hi, Jillian. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.